Ever get that feeling like your mood is kind of being hijacked by your own thoughts? Like maybe it's not even the situation itself, but uh, how you're thinking about it that sends you, spiraling.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive, we're exploring that very thing. How our thoughts, even the sneaky ones we don't always notice, can totally impact how we feel.
Right.
And we're diving into excerpts from David Byrne's book, Feeling Good. He really unpacks this whole concept of cognitive distortions.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about cognitive distortions is they're these mental patterns, and they're super common. But they can lead us to see things, well, a bit off, not super accurate, not really helpful.
Okay, so like we're not seeing things as they are. Our thoughts are distorting the picture.
Kinda, yeah, like you're looking at reality through a kind of wonky lens.
I'm already intrigued and maybe a little scared of what I'll learn about my own thinking.
The good news is just knowing about these distortions is a huge step. And even better, Burns lays out 10 common ones in our source materials, so it's like a roadmap.
A roadmap for our minds. I love that. So, ready to tackle these top 10 thought traps.
Absolutely, let's do it.
First up is all or nothing thinking. Seems like it's all about extremes, right? You're either successful or a total failure. No middle ground.
Exactly. Black and white thinking, no shades of gray. Like Burns' example, the student who always gets A's, then gets a B on a test, and boom, thinks they're a failure.
Ugh, been there. One setback and the world's ending. Instead of, okay, I didn't ace it, I'll learn and do better next time, it's, I'm a failure, period.
That's the extreme thinking it encourages, that all or nothing. Derails your mood, your motivation, the whole thing.
Gotcha. Okay, so what about overgeneralization? What's hiding in that trap?
Imagine you go on one bad date and now you're convinced you'll be alone forever. That's it, classic overgeneralization. One negative event becomes this big universal rule about you or the world.
So, one bad date doesn't equal a lifetime of being single. Hmm, that's good to know.
Ugh.
But I can see how easy it'd be to think that way, especially after a really, really bad date.
Oh yeah, it's tempting. We naturally look for patterns. But the key is, one experience, good or bad, doesn't predict the whole future.
Right, like saying, I burned dinner once, so now I'm a terrible cook forever. Not exactly logical?
Nope, not at all. And speaking of focusing on the negative, next up is mental filter.
Ooh, mental filter sounds kind of mysterious. What's that about?
So picture this. You get tons of positive feedback on a project, but one person has a tiny critique. And you get stuck on that one negative thing, ignoring all the praise.
Oh, yeah, I do that. It's like that one comment becomes this huge stain, blocking out everything good. Wouldn't that be exhausting to think like that all the time?
Totally exhausting, and it can really hurt your mood, your self-esteem, like wearing those rose-colored glasses. But in reverse, everything looks negative.
So we've got all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filter. It's like our minds are pros at finding the negative and making it louder. What else feeds into that?
It really is like our brains work against us sometimes. And this whole negative focus gets stronger with a distortion called disqualifying the positive. Basically, rejecting good experiences by saying they don't count for some reason.
Oh, I am so guilty of this. Someone
Ah.
compliments me and I brush it off. They're just being nice, or I haven't really seen my flaws, right? Like I'm scared to believe the good stuff.
It's sneaky, but it really keeps you in that negative outlook even when good things are happening.
Almost like self-sabotage, huh? Used to the negative story, don't know what to do with the positive.
That's a really good point. It shows how deep these things get. But the good news is, once we see them, we can start fighting back.
So we're not stuck with these negative thoughts forever. There's hope. What's the next distortion we should watch out for?
There's always hope. This next one, though, it's tricky because it's about making assumptions, without much to back them up. It's called jumping to conclusions. And actually, there are two kinds of this one.
Oh, assumptions. Those can be dangerous. So
Hmm.
what are the two ways we jump to conclusions?
The first one is mind reading. That's where we just assume we know what someone else is thinking. And usually it's something negative, even though we have no real proof.
Oh, I do that all the time. Like if a
Ugh.
coworker doesn't say hi in the hallway, I instantly think, oh, they must be mad at me. But they could just be having a bad day or be lost in thought, right?
Mhm.
It's crazy how fast we go to the negative.
It really is. Our minds are so good at filling in the blanks, but not always with the right info.
So what's the other kind of jumping to conclusions?
That's the fortune teller error. It's when we think things will turn out badly, and we're sure that's going to happen, like it's a fact, like predicting the future, but only the bad stuff.
Oh, I know that one too. It's like
Hmm.
you're so sure you'll bomb a presentation you don't even practice.
Hey.
You've already decided it'll be a disaster, so why bother?
Exactly. Self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The thing is, our thoughts aren't crystal balls. We can't actually predict the future, and assuming the worst usually limits what we can do.
Yeah, it's like we're setting ourselves up to fail before we even start. So mind reading and fortune telling, those are ways we jump to conclusions. What other distortion might be messing with how we see things?
Let's talk about magnification and minimization. This one is all about distorting how important things are. We either blow them way out of proportion or shrink them down to nothing.
So it's like looking through the wrong end of the binoculars, right? Either everything's huge and scary or tiny and doesn't matter.
Exactly. Burns even calls it the binocular trick. With magnification, also called catastrophizing, it's like you make a small mistake at work and instantly think you're getting fired. On the flip side, with minimization, you might downplay your own achievements, your good qualities, make them seem small.
It's like we can't see things clearly with these messed up lenses. We're either overreacting or underreacting, never just seeing things as they are. What's next on this tour of distortions?
Next up is emotional reasoning. It's all about letting your emotions tell you what's real instead of looking at the facts.
So it's like saying, I feel anxious, so something bad must be happening. Or, I feel unattractive, so I must be ugly. We're letting feelings be in charge, even if there's no proof.
That's it. We got to remember, feelings aren't facts. They come and go, and they can be influenced by all sorts of things, including, yep, you guessed it, our thoughts.
This really makes you think about how powerful our thoughts are. They can create our whole reality, even if it's not the true reality. What other distortion plays into that?
Well, there are should statements. Those are the shoulds, musts, and oughts we use to try and motivate ourselves or even try to control other people.
Oh, should statements. Those are a regular part of my inner voice. Things like, I should be working out more, or I shouldn't have had that extra cookie. Always beating ourselves up with expectations.
And often those shoulds do more harm than good. Guilt, shame, feeling not good enough, not exactly helpful for making positive changes.
It's a never-ending cycle of self-criticism. Instead of pushing us to do better, it just makes us feel bad.
You got it. And sometimes those shoulds are aimed outwards at other people, like he should be more responsible or she shouldn't act that way.
So it's not just about our own thoughts, but also how we judge others.
Exactly. By seeing these should statements for what they are, just thoughts, not commands, we can start to break free. So we're halfway through these sneaky patterns. We've got all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filter, disqualifying the positive, jumping to conclusions, magnification and minimization, emotional reasoning, and don't forget those should statements. What else is there?
Wow, that's a lot. What's next on the list?
Well, let's look at labeling and mislabeling. It's like overgeneralization, but on a whole other level. We slap a big negative label on ourselves or others instead of describing what actually happened.
So instead of, I messed up on that project, it's, I'm a total failure.
Exactly. Or someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of, wow, that driver's being reckless, it's, they're an idiot.
It's like we're boiling people down to these simple negative labels. It takes away their humanity. Doesn't leave much room for understanding, you know?
You're right. Gotta remember, labels are just labels. They don't tell the whole story.
Okay, so less judging, more understanding.
Yeah.
Got it. What's the last distortion we should watch out for?
The last one is personalization. This is when you blame yourself for things that are totally outside your control. You see yourself as the cause of bad stuff, even if you had nothing to do with it.
So, like, if a friend is going through a rough time, I might assume it's my fault, even if it has nothing to do with me.
That's a classic example, taking on too much responsibility, feeling guilty and helpless.
It's like we're carrying the weight of the world, even when it doesn't belong to us.
It's a heavy load, and it stops us from seeing clearly and dealing with the real issues. Phew, we covered a lot. From all or nothing thinking to personalization, 10 distortions in total. Starting to think maybe these are in my thinking more than I realized.
And that's the point of this whole thing, right? Becoming aware is the first step to changing them. Can't fix what you don't know is broken.
Exactly. It's not about becoming like the thought police, constantly watching every thought, but more like a curious observer, being a little skeptical of those automatic negative thoughts.
Okay, so less strict cop, more like a curious detective. But where do we start? How do we actually spot these distortions in our everyday lives?
Burns gives some great examples in the source material. It's all about noticing when your thoughts are taking you down a negativity spiral, then asking yourself, hold on, is this thought even true? Is there another way to look at this?
I like that. Taking a pause, stepping back, questioning those thoughts instead of just blindly believing them. It's about taking back control, right?
Exactly. It's realizing that thoughts are just thoughts, not necessarily facts, and we get to choose which ones we believe and which ones we let go.
That's pretty powerful. Okay, I'm ready to put this into practice. Let's try it with some real life situations. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Okay, first scenario. You're feeling totally swamped by a work project, convinced you're going to get fired. What distortions are at play here?
Ooh, yeah, classic. Work pressure can really bring these out. Definitely some catastrophizing happening here. Going from a tough project to thinking you'll be fired, that's a huge jump.
Right. Talk about drama. Like this one project is everything, and if it's not perfect, your whole career is over.
And it's not just dramatic, it's not helpful at all. Creates all this anxiety and stress, not what you need when you're already overwhelmed.
So, catastrophizing, for sure. What else might be feeding that fear of getting fired?
Maybe a little fortune teller error, too. Remember, that's where we predict doom and gloom like it's a done deal.
So it's not just that the project's hard, but you're already sure it'll lead to your downfall. Fortune telling your own doom. Not exactly a good strategy.
Nope. And to make things even more fun, some should statements might be in the mix, too.
Oh, good point. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Thoughts like, I should be handling this better, or I shouldn't feel so overwhelmed, just piling on more pressure, making things worse.
Exactly. Those shoulds often come from fear of judgment, fear of failure, like we have to meet these impossible standards or we're no good.
Hmm. Yeah, setting ourselves up for a fall, then beating ourselves up when we don't reach those standards.
Mm.
No wonder we feel overwhelmed. So in this one scenario, we've got catastrophizing, fortune teller error, and should statements all teaming up to create a big old mess of anxiety. But hey, at least now we can see them, right?
Right. Shining a light on those sneaky thoughts and saying, nope, not falling for it this time.
Exactly. And by doing that, we can start thinking in a more balanced, realistic way.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm already feeling a bit better. Let's try another one. This one's more personal. You feel unattractive, convinced your friends don't want to see you, so you cancel plans.
Ooh, this is a good one. Hits on those distortions that really mess with our self-esteem and our relationships. What do you think is going on here?
Mental filter is a big one here. That's where we zero in on one flaw and let it affect how we see ourselves. You might be focused on one thing you don't like about how you look, and boom, that's all you see. Good qualities, gone.
And that can really hurt how we value ourselves. It's like we're always looking for flaws instead of seeing the good stuff, the unique things about us.
It's so easy to get trapped in that negative self-talk, especially with all the perfect images we see all the time.
It's a constant struggle, and that mental filter can easily lead to another distortion, jumping to conclusions, specifically mind reading.
So not only do you feel bad about yourself, but now you're assuming your friends are judging you based on how you look, even if they've never done that before.
We project our own insecurities onto others, thinking they see us the way we see ourselves, leads to all sorts of problems and hurt feelings.
And then, to make things even more fun, we add in some emotional reasoning. Because if you feel unattractive, it must be true, right?
It's a classic combo. We let emotions call the shots instead of questioning them, looking for proof, like we're stuck in this echo chamber of negativity.
So mental filter, mind reading, and emotional reasoning all working together to keep us lonely and feeling bad. A recipe for social anxiety and low self-esteem. But at least we know the recipe now, so we can change it.
You got it. By being aware, we can challenge these distortions. We ask ourselves, is there proof for this thought? Am I letting one thing I don't like define my whole worth? Am I assuming I know what my friends are thinking without asking them?
It's about taking back control of our thoughts, choosing to believe something different, remembering that our thoughts aren't always the truth.
That's where the real change starts.
This is amazing. We're peeling back the layers of our minds, seeing all these hidden patterns that have been affecting our mood and actions without us even knowing.
And that's the power of awareness. Once we see them, we can make different choices.
Okay, so we explored these 10 distortions, and we're starting to see how they show up in our lives. But what does all this mean for our mood? How would these distortions actually affect how we feel?
Well, think about it. If you're always seeing things through these warped lenses, no wonder your mood takes a hit. It's like wearing those negativity glasses all the time. Everything seems bleak and hopeless.
Like we're constantly setting ourselves up for negative emotions, anxiety, feeling down, bad about ourselves. But if we learn to challenge those distortions, we could start thinking in a more balanced way.
Absolutely. And that can lead to a more positive, resilient way of feeling.
That's pretty cool. It's like we're taking back the power from those distortions.
Yeah.
But this is a lot to take in. Any last thoughts before we wrap things up?
The key takeaway here is your thoughts are powerful, but they're not always right.
True. We can't always control what pops into our heads, but we can control how we react to those thoughts.
And by learning to see and challenge these distortions, you can start to shift your perspective and, feel better.
Yeah, it's like we're, I don't know, like upgrading our mental software or something, installing a new program to help us catch those bugs and glitches in our thinking.
Ooh, I like that. And remember, this is just the start. The more you practice spotting and challenging these thought patterns, the easier it gets. Like working a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So it's not about like never having negative thoughts again, but learning how to deal with them better.
Exactly. It's realizing, hey, thoughts are just thoughts, not facts. We have the power to choose which ones we buy into and which ones we just let go.
Like we become the editors of our own minds, right?
Oh,
Choosing what stories we want to tell ourselves, what we want to believe. Pretty powerful stuff.
it is. And it changes everything, how we see the world and how we feel, in the end.
Well, this deep dive has been amazing. We dug into this hidden world of cognitive distortions, saw how they mess with our mood, and even learned how to fight back against those sneaky thoughts. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for understanding my own mind now.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There's lots of help out there, like the full text of Feeling Good, to give you even more support and guidance on your journey.
Right. This deep dive gave us a glimpse of how powerful it is to understand our own thoughts. But there's always more to learn. So one last thing for you to think about. A situation that happened recently that made you feel some negative emotions. Think about that situation and see if you can figure out which cognitive distortion might have been at play, influencing your feelings.
And once you figure it out, ask yourself, is there another way to see this situation? You always have the choice to find a more helpful perspective, one that gives you more power.
It's like we're becoming detectives of our own minds,
Right.
uncovering those hidden thought patterns that are holding us back. And with practice, we can become the masters of our own thoughts, choosing to believe the ones that help us and letting go of the ones that don't.
That's the journey of a lifetime, really, understanding and mastering our own minds.
That's a great way to put it. And that's it for today's deep dive. We hope exploring your thoughts and feelings was insightful and maybe even gave you a little mood boost. Until next time, happy thinking.